Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
If you've got some digestion issues going on, many of us do from time to time, he's got answers for you. He has given us so much insight on gut health over the last few weeks, and we're going to take you through the process of determining what's going on using me as a proverbial guinea pig test subject. And I believe we're going to learn a lot here. Josh Dech is our professional of the year. He's back with us. Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Steve, glad to be here. I'm excited to get into this one. It's rare anybody wants to be a guinea pig for the public eye. So thank you for your sacrifice and service.
We haven't done this yet, so we're going to see how this goes. But to reset everything, you help people when they've got challenges with digestion and such. I've had issues over the past. I feel that I'm in a good place now. We'll find out based on this test. And this test was very simple. Basic urine test, send it out, lab sends it back, and you get details. This goes way, way deeper than your typical gastro doc. They usually don't touch this kind of stuff. You know, it's kind of the basics. You're going a little bit deeper here. Pick up from that point.
That's a great pickup point. See, when we go to see a doctor, typically in the Western world, and again, I don't want to bash doctors, but their education is extraordinarily flawed. We go in and we say, here are my symptoms. They say, okay, here's your diagnosis, and here are the drugs we give to manage that diagnosis. Now, that diagnosis is just a word that defines your symptoms. So if you go into gut issues, you have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. You have IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's colitis. You have diverticulitis. But they don't ever tell you why. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's environmental, but the body doesn't make mistakes like this. These things can't possibly just happen randomly out of the blue. You can't go from sick to healthy and there not be a reason why. But Western medicine is so focused on managing symptoms, they don't even really look toward the root causes. And so when you come in to talk to me, Steve, I know you've been here for a couple of weeks now. You mentioned diverticulitis. And I say, okay, well, diverticulitis or small intestinal inflammation specifically, where is it coming from? It can't just happen to you out of nowhere. And so this urine test that you got gives us some really amazing insight into what's actually going on inside of your body, leading to this byproduct of symptoms that we now give this fancy name to.
And primarily, from my vantage point, we're dealing with bacteria. Would you say that is the cause of many of the challenges that we have?
Absolutely. And I would go one step further and say microbes. So microbes, or your microbiome, is this tiny ecosystem of bacteria and yeast and fungi and parasites and viruses all living in harmony together. When some of those overgrow, oftentimes bacteria, they become a big problem. And now they moved into areas where they're not supposed to be. They're putting a bunch of junk and trash in the street in the community, and now we want them gone because they're a big mess. And that overgrowth of whatever microbe or bacteria leads to these issues typically.
Let's get right to it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Test results. What do we got?
So this is a really great little test, Steve. So we got a urine test, a little bit of pee in a cup, send it off to a lab, and we measure what's called organic acids. Now, if you think about that, really what organic acids are, it's byproduct, like cellular exhaust. When you go to the gym, we know that feeling of working out, exercising, you get that lactic acid. That's a byproduct of your body's muscle cells doing their job. They create this acid-like exhaust, and it goes to the bloodstream and it burns. Well, every living organism that we have inside of our body produces these acids as exhaust. It's how they live, breathe, eat, poop. Our body does it, so do our cells. And so we measure is different organic acids inside of your body based on what it's produced from the tiny little organisms that we looked at inside. And so we can measure all kinds of stuff. We can see vitamins and minerals. If you remember the Krebs cycle from high school biology, how your cells use oxygen and put byproducts, we can measure the neurotransmitters in your brain. So that's your dopamine, your serotonin, the things that keep you happy, feel good, good moods, bad moods, what helps keep you concentrated and focused can all be measured in your urine, which is really quite remarkable.
I had no idea. Seriously, had no idea. Whenever I go for, once a year labs, basic stuff, yes, they usually order labs, but you don't, it's all basic. It's extremely basic, I guess, based on insurance companies or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
They don't give you the insight that we get from the test that you suggested.
That's right. So when you go and get a typical urine test, what the doctors are looking for are your kidneys functioning well? Are there any infections? How are your electrolytes, your sodium, magnesium, potassium? What are the basics going on? Are your kidneys filtering? That's about what we look at. But if there is a problem, we don't go why. We go, here's the symptom. So here's the drug to manage that symptom. What this test is doing is going, okay, here's what you're experiencing. Here's why it's happening, where it's coming from. And we can use this as clinicians to say, here's what we need to do in order to get you better because your symptoms aren't random. And now we have the root. We have the thorn in the foot, so to speak. We know why you're limping, why it's hurting. We're not just putting numbing cream on the pain to stop you from feeling the thorn in your foot.
What'd you find?
Well, let's talk about this, Steve. So, diverticulitis, inflammation in the small bowel, right? Or the diverticula, that's all it really means. Itis just means inflammation. And so, anytime you hear itis, arthritis, diverticulitis, all these itises are just inflammation. So, you have to answer why it gets there. And so, what we found on your urine test is one particular marker worth noting called HPHPA. Now it's a big, fancy, long 3-hydroxyphenyl 3-hydroxy. It's a big, long word I don't even want to try to pronounce. But if you remember HPHPA, it's a byproduct or that cellular exhaust of one particular type of bacteria called Clostridia. Now, Clostridia is part of our normal ecosystem. Some of those of you who are in maybe the hospital or have family or friends who have gone into the hospital or have been using antibiotics or have gut disease who might be familiar with a condition called C. diff. That's
Ah,
Clostridium difficile, right? You've heard the term.
sure.
And so this is an umbrella species. So Clostridia, there's about 200 different species of Clostridia bacteria. This is measuring two in particular. It's measuring the C. diff as well as another one that we're measuring here inside of your urine. And so your markers didn't indicate Clostridium difficile or C. diff. It's a different Clostridia, which can overgrow from stress, from diet, from antibiotics, from all kinds of different factors. See, our ecosystems in our gut are microbiomes. They live in this really nice, we call homeostasis. They're always checks and balances. It's like a city. You have garbage men, you have electricians, you have teachers and police and baristas. Everybody works together to make this ecosystem run. Well, so do your microbes inside of your gut. The problem is, if we had 10,000 baristas in a city of five, now we've got a problem. There's not enough people to keep the balance. We have an overgrowth. This is where things become imbalanced. We reach a state called dysbiosis, which just means imbalanced gut bacteria. And so this Clostridia for you has no overgrown. So instead of being a contributing member to society inside of your gut, it's now creating a problem and it's overproducing these things which create inflammation. This HPHPA is very useful. What we're seeing is these bacteria thrive in places of oxygen, so particularly here inside of the gut. They also create spores. And the problem with spores, it's kind of like a tree producing pollen. It blows all over the place and gets everywhere. Now, those spores, again, in a healthy ecosystem are good. But if you have too many, you have allergies coming up, the pollen completely covers the grass, nothing can really grow. We have too many spores in the body being produced by these bacteria, they become toxic. They cover the ground. And all these little microbes produce these spores. As we kill them off or they die as part of their life cycle, they can kind of burst. It's like popping a balloon full of confetti. So all this starts to go all over the place. They touch all over the intestines. Your immune system goes, whoa, what are you? Bring in the cleanup crew. What does that look like? Inflammation. Inflammation is your body just trying to heal you. If you're ever inflamed or ever have an infection, there's something in there. Your body's brought all these immune cells to come in to try to clean up the mess, but it's not able to clear these things out. And so this is where we get this chronic inflammation because your body has an ongoing healing response and it can't finish the job. And now we have this overgrowth your body's trying to clear, leading to this diverticulitis, which is inflammation in the intestine, and it can't finish the job in the cleanup. And so now we have this ongoing problem. Inflammation, toxins, leaky gut can cause all kinds of things like mood swings, anxiety, depression, joint pain, early aging, sleeplessness, restlessness, asthma, irritability, you name it. Almost all diseases begin in the gut. Now, that's like drinking from a fire hose. I gave you a lot there, but the idea is imbalance leads to overproduction. Overproduction leads to inflammation, which leads to the symptoms you feel now.
Hmm. Should I be concerned with what has been found thus far with this urine test?
Well, let's define concern. Would I suggest running to the doctor and grabbing a bunch of antibiotics and popping them down the hatch? Though I can't legally advise you, not as a client, I can't legally advise on medicine. We do know that antibiotics typically do a broad spectrum coverage. So they cover the good and the bad. So as you're killing the bad, you're also killing the good, which contributes again to this ecosystem of imbalance or dysbiosis.
Right.
And so is it concerning? Yes, in a way, because you have symptoms. You've presented with a disease process called diverticulitis. And so look at it this way. Your cup is filling up. Every time we eat something we shouldn't, every time we're stressed out, water fills our glass. But our body has excellent drainage pathways. Your liver, your lymph, your kidneys, sleeping helps drain that cup. Exercise, good diet drains that cup. But as we get older or as we develop more processes and disease and sickness and things pile up in the body, the drainage starts to close tighter and tighter. So we fill up easier and drain slower. Now our cup overflows, and now we have this problem. And so when we have a diagnosable disease, really any symptom, is that cause for concern in the way of awareness? Yes. Does it mean life or death? Not necessarily. But once it is a diagnosable condition, it's at least far enough along the inflammatory spectrum that we say, hey, why don't we dive in and really like fix this thing now before it really burns a hole in the colon or turns to Crohn's disease or surgery or something when they have to cut bowel out if it's poorly managed. Some people, yes, can live their entire lives with this, but it's pretty uncomfortable, especially if it flares up. And so is it worth addressing? Absolutely. Can it be reversed? I absolutely believe so.
Hmm. I'm going to press the pause button. You led us into one direction I want to share. And then we're going to get back to the results and what I'm supposed to be doing to remedy the situation. But I was texting the other night with my friend, and
Mhm.
he's had ongoing bouts, stomach issues over the years, and he let them go. And he didn't get enough proper advice from a professional like yourself. This has led to, I mean, it's years, chronic issues.
Sure.
I believe he has Crohn's and a lot of different things. At this moment, he's a few months into having his smaller and larger intestine disconnected.
Mm.
That's where he is at this moment. And somewhere along the line, his bladder had puncture to it.
Mhm.
So he's had to deal with that. Not going into detail. He's still in 6 weeks. He still has 6 weeks to go. I'm not even getting into detail what's that like to have your small intestine, large intestine disconnected. He'll find out whether they can do the surgery then in 6 weeks to put it back together. Long road ahead. This is I voice him as like a regular dude goes up on ceilings and roofs and replaces air conditioning units. And this is what he's dealing with and he admits not taking care of it from the beginning or somewhat into the symptoms that he's had. So you had mentioned about the intestine and all that. I just wanted to share because it's so fresh on my radar what he's dealing with right now.
Well, I think that's a great one to talk about. I had a client a couple months ago. We just wrapped him up early this year that he was dealing with a similar situation. He actually developed irritable bowel syndrome a couple months into his new job working in HVAC, so ventilation, air conditioning, the works. A couple months after that, he was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis out of the blue. 21-year-old kid, perfectly healthy, got sick. Well, we did a little history, looked at his job, look at what was happening. I thought you probably have a mold infection. I think there's mold toxins. We call them mycotoxins inside of your gut because they actually can get into this ecosystem and cause overgrowth of bacteria, inflammation, immune responses. Lo and behold, we actually sent him for a urine test, a test for mold, and he was full of it. It's a very common mold called okra toxin A. We call it OTA for short. And so his doctor said, well, it's genetic. There's nothing we can do. It's going to be largely due to your heritage. It's just part of your life now. So here's some medication. We said, whoa, hold the phone. The history makes sense. The tests add up. Let's deal with this. We got him on some supplements, pulled the mold out. Within 2 months, he was off his drugs, no more bowel disease. By month 4, he went back for his scans and scopes. Gone, no more disease because the mold caused the problem, but the medical system never checked for that. They went, check, you have the disease, therefore we need this medication and that's it. Or, like your friend, surgery. But there's a good chance that full thing could have been fully reversed or even prevented had we caught it sooner and said, hey, here's what's going on right now. Here's the invader to the ecosystem. that your body is trying to heal you from, thereby causing inflammation, which led to the breakdown or the bladder puncture. Because all these toxins, they don't stay inside of your gut. They circulate through your lymphatic system in your bloodstream. Well, your kidneys filter blood. That's how they make urine. Well, these toxins are into your blood because they left from your gut to your bloodstream. They get into your kidneys, leading to infection, inflammation in the bladder. The tissues wear and tear and break down, and poof, now you've got a puncture, or now you have a hole or perforation, and now you've got surgery. It's all preventable.
Mm. So back to the results.
Yes. So here's what we can look at, Steve. We have Clostridia overgrowth. It's very common. I see this in all stages of bowel disease, Crohn's, colitis, diverticulitis, even IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. So here's what we have to look at. There are 5 R's we really typically use for reversing bowel disease, or really just about any disease. But the first thing we have to look at, number one, above all else, is going to be drainage. Now, it's something a lot of people don't talk about. And frankly, it's something that gets missed in a lot of scenarios. With even some of the best professionals, we all have to learn it at some point, myself included. So we can look at the 5 R's for any disease, but the first one is drainage. We talked about your cup overflowing. When that overflows with all the illnesses and sickness and stress and food and bacteria and microbes and all these things overflow. So we have to empty your cup. Well, how do we do that? Number one, if you want to drain the bathtub, you turn off the water. So if we're doing something actively to contribute to the problem, we're eating something we shouldn't be, we're drinking alcohol, we're high stress, we're not sleeping very well, let's fix the things that are filling your glass. That's number one. But number two, we have to open your drainage pathways. Liver and bile ducts are so common. So many people have their gallbladder removed going, well, it's a gallbladder problem. Well, your gallbladder is an extension really of your liver. It's connected. Your gallbladder picks up bile. It's the thing that basically takes fats or oils and turns them into water so your body can really absorb it. It's called emulsifying. And so what happens if your liver is all junked up, it's all full of toxins because it's a primary filtering system of your body. So it's dealing with all the stuff it's trying to filter out. It gets really kind of gunky. It doesn't produce proper bile, which leads to sluggish, thick bile like maple syrup or coagulation, so to speak, inside the gallbladder. Instead of proper bile, your body can secrete to break down fats. And so now the gallbladder is suffering as a byproduct of the liver, but yet we cut the gallbladder out rather than fixing the liver and emptying the gallbladder. And so we have to work on drainage, bile, and liver. Your body actually recirculates 95% of your bile. It's very expensive on a cellular level for your body to create bile to break down fats. So it recycles 95% of it, and it largely works as part of a filtration process for your body. But if your liver's dirty and your bile is sluggish and you're recirculating all these toxins, it's another problem. So we have to clean the liver, filter out and clean the bile and bile ducts. That's drainage. And then we have to look at your other drainage pathways. How do things leave the body? Urinary, right? So bladder, colon, through your bowels, sinuses, lungs, skin, kidneys, lymphatic system, liver, and bile. These are our major drainage pathways. So we have to work on opening these up. That can look like red light therapy, exercise, massage, lymphatic massage, good old-fashioned sweating, getting into the sun. These things help your body actually drain and detoxify. So once you've gone through drainage, we're allowing things now, we open the doors. We're trying to evict tenants. What happens if you have tenants in a building and you evict them, but the doors are locked? Well, now they're peeing on the carpet or starting a fire in the kitchen because they're mad at you, right? So they're trying to get out. And so we have to open the door to let things out. This is where we can then go into the 5 R's. And I'll get into that unless you have any questions.
No, we're good. I don't want to run out of time. So I want
Let's do it.
And I need a remedy. How do I fix this?
Sure. So the 5 R's, Steve, I'll go through them quickly. Number one, remove the problem. We have to learn how to get rid of this Clostridia. Number two, we have to replenish the nutrients. Your body is a city. All of the organs are like a factory. All the cells are the factory workers. Well, your workers need tools in the forms of vitamins and minerals and amino acids. These are all things that your body will utilize as tools to do their job. So we have to remove the problem, remove this Clostridia. We have to replenish the nutrients that your body needs for tools, rebuild the microbiome. Your Clostridia is overgrown. We have this dysbiosis. We have to fix that gut bacteria and rebalance things and repair the tissues. Your gut's inflamed. What we call opportunistic microbes, or the bad guys like Clostridia, they overgrow They take the opportunity to overgrow. Well, you couldn't live in a house that's on fire. Neither does a healthy ecosystem in your gut. And so we have to repair the inflamed tissue and start to repair that so we can have a healthy home. And then we can rejuvenate the immune system. So that's remove the problem, replenish nutrients, rebuild the microbiome, repair the tissues, rejuvenate the immune system. Now, there are many takes on the 5 R's and exactly what they are and what they look like, but this is the general overview that we'll see. So the first thing we have to look at, Steve, is going to be drainage. Can we get your body to empty out the junk inside of its system, opening the liver and bile ducts? There's all kinds of methods in supplementation. But number two, very importantly, which a lot of people miss, is biofilms. Now, our bacteria produce biofilms. It's kind of like a mucousy substance. Now, we need it. It allows them to move like a slip and slide. They can move around, they can breed and grow and reproduce. On the other hand, these biofilms, when they're overproduced, can be a problem. When you're highly inflamed, you can make too many of them. Well, now it's like a bomb shelter. If I were to go in with antimicrobials or antibiotics or something to try to take down the Clostridia, they sort of bounce off the top of this biofilm like a bomb shelter. So we have to break that down in order to be able to get in there and get at them. Well, what stores inside of biofilms? It's a layer. It's this big, thick layer of film. More toxins. This is where people go wrong. They go, let me break down the biofilms and kill my bacteria. Well, now you're shooting toxins everywhere. Your drainage isn't open, and all those toxins aren't being captured. So this is where we use binders. Things like charcoal, like activated charcoal, bentonite clay, zeolite clay, humic acid, fulvic acid, even certain fibers, okra powder, citrus pectin. These are great binders. They hold on to toxins and help remove them from the body. So we work on drainage, open the doors first. Number two, we can work on breaking down biofilms and using binders to give the body something to hold on to so it can exit the GI and we have less circulating into the system, causing more problems, feeding back into drainage issues. So we drain, we biofilms, we take care of binders and our antimicrobials while also building the microbiome in the gut. So we can use things sometimes like certain probiotics, specifically for Clostridia. So many people have gone to the hospital and gotten things like C. diff. Well, using recurring antibiotic therapy also leads to C. diff. Lots of studies show really basic probiotic usage like lactobacillus or bifidobacterium. These are great probiotics you can buy over the counter, which have been shown in high doses to actually push out Clostridia and keep C. diff from recurring using antibiotics. So they're really, really great in benefiting the ecosystem. So we open drainage, attack the biofilms, bind onto the junk, that stuff we're putting everywhere. We rebuild that microbiome while we're killing off the bad guys and slowly work on our behaviors and habits that maybe created the issue in the first place.
Wow.
It's a lot. Thank you for
It's a
coming to my
lot.
TED Talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So of course I Googled, I'm trying to learn a little bit more about this. What would be the steps? What would somebody like me with this bacteria, what should I be taking?
Hmm. So this is where we get into some gray area. I'll have you sign a waiver just because I can get sued very easily here. Um, there are lots of great biofilm disruptors out there. We call these proteolytic enzymes. So you'll see things like serrapeptase, EDTA, which can be a binder for some heavy metals. They hide in biofilms. There's a lot of them out there. I have no affiliations with these companies, but I really like their products. For example, Claire Labs has a great product called Interphase Plus. It's got some of the binders there. It's great for breaking down biofilms, but usage is we have to be very careful. If you go and start taking these biofilm disruptors and you're not doing the right things, you don't have the landscape set, you can make yourself very sick. I've seen people try to take these things into their own hands and put themselves into the hospital because you hypertoxify your body because it's not ready to get rid of this. This is why so many people go through detoxes. They try a cleanse or a detox, they get very, very ill. It's not you detoxing, you have blocked drainage and you're moving things around the body because they can't exit, they just settle elsewhere. And this causes a big problem. So there are lots of things out there. There's great binders that you can buy, Binder Pro from Nutridyne, GI Detox from Biocidin. They have great binders out there, but it's really a very careful structuring and staggering process to make sure we don't really effectively harm ourselves and make things much, much worse.
With what you identify with this bacteria. Now, I was diagnosed with diverticulitis, yeah, minor, and I really don't have any major issues, gastritis.
Yep.
And right now, don't really have any major issues. Really don't. seem to be have moderated once I eliminated the stress. That I believe had a lot to do with it, in my opinion. Um, Curious, would this bacteria, what is it called again?
Clostridia.
Okay. Um, would that have something to do with um, trying to lose weight and you don't lose weight? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a really interesting study, Steve, and I know we're running out of time here, so I'll make her quick, where they actually took the gut microbiomes, they studied these in mice, and they put
Sure.
them on a basic calorie deficit and an exercise program. And they took one set of mice and really disrupted the microbiome, antibiotics, and added all kinds of bad stuff. The group of mice that exercised and ate really well, lost weight, gained a bunch of hormonal benefits and cellular, what we call metabolic benefits from changing their diet and exercising. But the mice with the disrupted microbiomes did not get the same benefits. Some didn't even lose weight at all. This is where we get what we call weight loss resistant, because your bacteria produce postbiotics. You eat poop, so do your bacteria. They eat food, they eat what you feed, and they poop out these postbiotics, which help balance out hormones and chemical signaling and detoxing. They communicate with your immune system. They're all connected. What they found was that these mice with disrupted microbiomes didn't get benefits. But when they took the microbiome or poop from the healthy mice and fed it to, because mice eat poop, they fed it to the disrupted mice. They suddenly started losing weight and feeling better and getting benefits. Even some without exercising at all got the benefits simply by having better bacteria. So they are extremely important.
Hmm.
They modify and work with our own genetics and DNA.
Which I find in the last couple of months, I've been working out. A fair amount, changed my eating, and I haven't lost a pound. Yeah, maybe a pound back up. Nothing even to even mention. And I think I should, be dropping more. So maybe this in lies, one of the reasons why.
Huge. Any bloating in the midsection, any water retention that you're getting, even from inflammation, just the water alone can be several pounds. Women going through menopause, men dealing with what we call andropause, which is really that middle age as testosterone really comes down and depletes. So much of this we can see that can be fixed by simply addressing the gut, our drainage and detox pathways, so your body can manage itself as it was intended to. If we look at hunter-gatherer indigenous tribes, great one that's become really popular lately is the Maasai people of Africa. They live off the land. They grow their own food. They eat the animals they catch. They don't have any of these diseases we have. They don't have acne. They don't have obesity. They don't have metabolic dysfunction. They don't have heart disease. Their elders are elders who contribute to the community. 80 years old are still out hunting. We have elderly in nursing homes, sick and dying and feeble because we're so sick from a young age. So what we do and how we input changes everything, and our gut bacteria is connected to all of it.
I will need to connect with you to get more details on this
Well,
and
you know how
figure
to
it
reach
out.
me, Steve.
But interestingly, this is the stuff that, listen, I went through, gastro, both ways, scoped and everything, the whole deal. This didn't come up. Nothing, no details whatsoever. Just barely call it the basics, which was good to rule out ulcer and things like that, but doesn't address the problem.
Never
The
tells you why.
never tells you why. Yeah. Tell us why. How do we connect with you?
Easiest way to get a hold of us is through the website. That's gutsolution.ca, all singular, .ca for Canada, gutsolution.ca. We have information for everyone. We specialize in Crohn's, colitis, and other itis of the bowel disease. We work with people all over the world. All you got to do is ask for help. It's just one website away between you and finding relief. That's gutsolution.ca.
Talk to a lot of people. Nobody even comes close. And I truly mean this. No one comes close to the knowledge that you have when it comes to the gut situation, digestion, all of that. Thanks for the insight today. Lots to digest, no pun intended. But it's important because this is the baseline for everything that we're dealing with. We don't realize it, and I don't think our medical professionals are getting it either. Appreciate it, all our podcasts so far. Learned a lot. Definitely have.
Been a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.